my father pointed a trembling finger, his face a mask of righteous fury in the flickering lamplight of the co-op's meeting hall. "It's him," he choked out, the words ripping through the panicked silence. "His unnatural methods, his filth, he brought this on us." Every eye in that room, people I'd known my whole life, turned on me. Not with suspicion, but with the dead certainty of a congregation that had found its devil. They didn't see me, the boy who'd helped them mend fences and harvest crops. They saw a scapegoat for the gray rot, the creeping sickness that was turning our valley soil to ash and withering plants from the inside out. They saw the weird kid who preferred studying esoteric botany over crop rotation charts. And in their fear, they found it so easy to believe. My family didn't just exile me. They performed an exorcism. My brother packed my things in trash bags while my mother wept, not for me, but for the shame I brought upon the family name. I was driven to the edge of the valley, to a plot of land so notoriously sour that not even weeds would take root, and left there with a few $100s and the crushing weight of their hatred. They called my obsession, my deep, abiding belief that certain plants could commune with the earth in ways we'd forgotten, delusional, unhealthy. "A disgrace. You'll lose your mind out there, chasing ghosts in the dirt," my brother had sneered, tossing the last bag at my feet. "Good riddance." He was half right. I did lose my mind, but I found something else in the process. My new home was a boneyard. The soil wasn't just sour. It was saturated with a kind of profound, ancient grief. Nothing I planted grew. Not until I, out of a desperate, sleepless whim, planted the midnight phlox, a rare night-blooming specimen whose seeds I'd guarded for years. I planted it over a spot where the earth felt hollow. The next morning, it had not only sprouted, but bloomed, its petals the color of a fresh bruise. I dug carefully around its base and found its roots, like pale, questing fingers, had wrapped themselves around the brittle, yellowed shard of a human femur. That was the beginning of my descent, my forbidden horticulture, my necrobotany. I stopped trying to grow food and started cultivating catalysts. I sought out the whisper-thin legends of plants that thrived on sorrow, that bloomed only in the presence of death. The corpse-kisser orchid, the marrow bloom, the ghost pipe that, in the right soil, was said to echo the last thoughts of the dead. My family's mockery followed me in bitter, infrequent phone calls. "Still playing with your dead flowers, Leo?" My father would ask, his voice dripping with contempt. "The whole valley's laughing at you." But I wasn't playing. I was listening. The plants became my conduits. As their roots sank deeper, burrowing into the forgotten graves that littered my land, they brought back echoes, whispers, not words, but the psychic friction of memory. I learned the truth of the valley. It wasn't just land, it was a vessel, a vast, unmarked cemetery for a forgotten people. And the gray rot wasn't a disease, it was an awakening, a hunger, a vast subterranean network of fungal intelligence older than any tree that was feeding on the decay and spreading, turning the living soil into a sterile monument of its own grief. I wasn't chasing ghosts. I was mapping the nervous system of a god made of bone and memory. Years passed. I documented my work, my chilling cultivation. I learned to grow plants that could soothe the network. Plants that could create barriers. Plants that could, in a terrible, beautiful symbiosis, feed the ancient hunger with their own life force, satiating it. My research, shared on encrypted forums with others who studied the world's hidden anatomy, earned me a new name. Not a disgrace, but a specialist, a warning. The man who gardened in graveyards and spoke to the soil. Then, the call I always knew would come did. It was my brother. His voice, once so full of scorn, was a frayed, terrified thread. Leo, it's everywhere. The rot. It's at the edge of our property. The government scientists, their chemicals, nothing works. Dad told me to call you. I returned not as the exiled son, but as a consultant. I drove my old truck down the familiar lane, past fields of withered, gray stalks that looked like skeletal hands reaching from the dirt. My family was waiting on the porch. They looked older, beaten down by the very horror they had blamed on me. My father couldn't meet my eyes. My mother just stared, as if seeing a ghost. Can you stop it? My father finally managed, his voice raspy. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the back of my truck and pulled out a single potted plant. It was my masterpiece, a silent requiem, its leaves a deep Venus purple and its single unopened bud as pale as bone. You were all wrong, I said, my voice quiet, devoid of the anger I thought I'd feel. There was only a vast, cold emptiness. It was never a disease. It's a presence. It's hungry. You can't poison it. You have to give it an offering. I carried the pot to the edge of their pristine manicured lawn, right where the gray decay began its creep. I knelt, dug a small hole with my bare hands, and placed the plant within it. My family watched, huddled together, their faces a mixture of desperation and disbelief. You mocked what I did, I said, looking over my shoulder at them. You called it insane. You have no idea what insanity is. You've been living on top of a tomb and calling it home. As the roots of the silent requiem touched the soil, a change occurred. It was subtle at first, a faint vibration in the ground. The plant, which had been dormant, began to unfurl. Its roots visibly burrowed downwards, twisting with an unnatural speed, plunging into the earth. And then it began. It wasn't a sound you hear with your ears. It was a pressure inside your skull, a chorus of whispers rising not from my plant, but from the very ground they stood on. The collective sorrowful sigh of 1,000 forgotten souls, the psychic scream of the network I had spent years learning to endure. My mother shrieked and covered her ears, but it did no good. My brother stumbled back, his face white with terror, eyes darting around wildly as if expecting corpses to claw their way out of the lawn. But my father? He just stood there, his jaw slack, his body trembling violently. His eyes locked with mine, and in them I saw the dawning, soul-shattering realization. This was the abyss he'd sent his own son into. This was the madness he'd accused me of inventing. This was the horror I had been living with day and night for years, while they sat in their safe, clean home and called me a disgrace. The silent requiem's bud slowly peeled open, revealing petals as white as clean scrubbed bone. It released no scent, only a profound, echoing silence that seemed to drink the whispers. The ground stilled. The pressure in our heads receded. The gray rot at the edge of the lawn seemed to halt its advance, held at bay by my offering. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my hands. I left them there, trembling on the edge of their poisoned Eden, forever bound to the horrifying truth beneath their feet. My vindication wasn't in their apology, which would never come. It was in their silence. It was in the shared, awful knowledge that now haunted their home as it had once haunted mine. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving the lonely bloom to stand sentinel. I had survived my exile. I had mastered the darkness they feared. And I had brought a piece of it back, a gift of terrible clarity, leaving them to live with the ghosts they had refused to see.